Santa's coming to town.
Santa! Oh my God!
Santa here?
You know, every December my family does the same thing. We decorate the house, we put lights on trees, we argue about when it's the acceptable time to start listening to Christmas music. And then, almost without thinking, we sit down for the same movies, the same ones we've watched every Christmas. Home Alone, A Christmas Carol, Elf, and also 2019's Klaus. Movies we don't just like, but have become tradition. But this year, I realized something. We keep rewatching the same Christmas movies, not because they're better than everything that came after, but because almost nothing that came after feels like it could stand in the same room as this. And I don't think that's nostalgia talking. Here's the thing. I'm not saying more recent Christmas movies are bad. We've had plenty of good movies set at Christmas in recent years. But that's not the same thing. There's a difference between a movie that happens during Christmas and a Christmas movie that earns a permanent place in the season itself. And if you ask me when the last time we actually got one of those was, a real one, the kind that could stand next to Home Alone or Elf without shrinking, it's gotta be 2019's Klaus, an animated movie by Netflix of all places.
What?
Now, before you all tell me to just shut the fuck up,
You filthy animal.
I want to be very clear about what I'm saying and what I'm not. I'm not saying no good Christmas adjacent movie has been made since. That would be obviously untrue. What I am saying is we haven't had a Christmas movie in 6 years that felt like it was designed to embody the season, and that difference matters. Look, let me explain why Klaus and why the gap since feels so noticeable.
Mr. Klaus, you have a gift.
We need to talk about what the classic Christmas movies were actually doing, because they weren't just telling seasonal stories, they were building rituals. Take Home Alone. On the surface, it's a family comedy, but what makes it endure isn't the slapstick or the one-liners, it's the premise. A child is forgotten, not metaphorically, literally, left behind, abandoned, forced to confront the responsibility that maybe the people who are supposed to care about him won't. That's not cozy, that's terrifying. And Christmas is the pressure cooker that makes it work. The absent hurts more because it's Christmas. The reunion matters more because it's Christmas. The holiday isn't decoration, it's the emotional engine. Or take A Christmas Carol, a story so foundational we have stopped questioning how dark it actually is. This is a story about a man who is spiritually dead, a man whose isolation is so complete that the universe itself has to intervene. Ghosts don't visit Scrooge because it's December. They visit him because Christmas is the one moment when moral failure is impossible to ignore. You can be selfish all year, you can be cruel all year, but at Christmas, the lie collapses. That's why the story works. That's why it's been retold for over a century. And this is the common thread running through the classics. They don't avoid discomfort, they use that discomfort. Loneliness, fear, regret, the terror of being forgotten, the fear of having wasted your life. Christmas isn't the reward at the end of these stories, it's the test. Which brings us back to Klaus, because Klaus understands this in a way most modern Christmas don't even attempt. Klaus isn't just a feel-good origin story, it's a myth. A story about a broken place, a town defined by cruelty, inertia, and generational hatred. People don't help each other in this world. They actively resist kindness. And generosity, real generosity, has to be learned the hard way. That's crucial. Because Klaus doesn't assume Christmas magic exists, it shows us how it starts. And that's the key difference. Klaus feels like a story that could be told again and again, a story that doesn't belong to 2019, a story that feels older than its release date. That's what the classics have in common. They don't feel like products of their time, they feel like they were always there. But here's where things get complicated. After Klaus, Christmas movies didn't disappear. If anything, we entered the most prolific era of Christmas filmmaking in history. Every platform needed one, sometimes 10, sometimes 20. Netflix, Amazon, Hallmark, Lifetime, everyone wanted their own slice of December. Somewhere in the last few years, Christmas movies stopped being stories about Christmas and became movies that were simply set during Christmas. And I know that sounds like a small little difference, but it truly isn't. A movie set at Christmas uses the season as a backdrop: lights, snow, music, deadlines, decor. A Christmas movie, a true Christmas movie, uses the season as pressure. It forces characters to confront things they've been avoiding. It brings loneliness into sharper focus. It makes reconciliation urgent. It makes time feel limited. Remove Christmas from Home Alone and the story collapses. Remove it from A Christmas Carol and the moral logic evaporates. Remove it from Klaus and the myth no longer makes sense. But remove Christmas from most of modern holiday movies and nothing really happens. I'll bet you $20 you cannot find me a modern Christmas movie that cannot survive without Christmas. And I don't think that's failure of talent, it's a failure of intention. This is where a movie like The Holdover becomes important. And just listen to me for a second, because The Holdovers is genuinely great, thoughtful, human, willing to sit in sadness. It understands winter, it understands isolation, it understands how holidays amplify emotional wounds. And yet, it doesn't quite do the thing the classics do. Not because it's worse, but because it's aiming at something else. The Holdovers is a movie about specific people in a specific moment. It doesn't aspire to myth. It doesn't want to be inherited. It doesn't feel like something you pass down to kids the way Home Alone was passed down to us. And that's okay. In fact, it's part of what makes it good. But it also highlights the gap, because when a movie like The Holdover stands out as the exception, what it's really showing us is how rare sincerity has become. Not just sincerity as emotion, but sincerity as ambition.
Please, at least pretend to be a human being.
Most modern Christmas movies don't want to last. They want to be watched, preferably while you're doing something else. They are designed to be pleasant, unchallenging, soft around the edges. They're built for autoplay, and that changes how stories are written. Conflict becomes minimal, loneliness becomes temporary, problems are solved quickly, usually through romance. Everything bends towards reassurance, not earned reassurance, immediate reassurance. And this is where something important gets lost, because Christmas stories have never been about pretending everything is fine. They're about facing the fear that it isn't. When we talk about the classics, we often remember the joy, but what gives that joy weight is what comes before it. Kevin McAllister is genuinely alone. Buddy the Elf is genuinely desperate. Scrooge is genuinely lost. Those stories earn their endings. Modern Christmas movies often skip that step. They give us the ending first and hope we don't notice. This shift didn't happen because audiences suddenly became shallow. It happened because the system changed. Streaming doesn't reward longevity. It rewards engagement. Not will people rewatch this in 10 years, but will people finish it tonight? That's a completely different question. And when that question becomes the priority, stories stop reaching for performance. They reach for comfort. And comfort isn't bad. Christmas should be comforting. But comfort without risk is anesthetic. It numbs rather than heals. The classics understood that. They knew that warmth only matters if you felt the cold. Which brings us back to the gap, because since Klaus, we haven't stopped making Christmas movies. We've just stopped making ones that believe they're important enough to last. And I know how hopeless this sounds, but I swear I am not just trying to ruin your Christmas with a dose of depression. This isn't hopelessness. The absence doesn't mean the tradition is dead. So let me tell you about something quieter, something the classics understood, something Klaus understood, something the industry may have forgotten, but audiences haven't. I was really tempted to end the video at this point, to end the conversation in disappointment, to say that something has been lost, that the tradition has faded, that Christmas movies just aren't what they used to be. And on some level, it would have been the right move. It has been a long time since we had a Christmas movie that felt inevitable. A movie that arrived and immediately felt like it had always been there, always been part of the season. That absence is real and it's okay to feel it. But absence isn't the same thing as disappearance, and that distinction matters more than it seems. Christmas stories don't vanish the way trends do. They don't burn out. They don't get replaced. They go quiet. They wait. They come back when someone decides the story is worth telling. Not because a platform needs content, but because a person has something to say. That's how the classics were born. It's easy to forget that Home Alone wasn't made to be a tradition. It was made because someone believed that the fear of being forgotten was worth exploring. It's easy to forget that A Christmas Carol wasn't written to be comforting. It was written to confront moral failure. And Klaus didn't work because it was animated or modern or different. It worked because it remembered that generosity has to be learned and that kindness doesn't arrive fully formed. So here's your dose of hope. That knowledge isn't gone. It hasn't expired. It hasn't been disproven. It's just been set aside. So when another true Christmas movie arrives, one that can stand next to the classics without apology, it won't look like content. I hope you keep in mind that it won't be afraid of sadness and it won't rush to reassure you. It will trust you to sit with discomfort, to feel the cold before the warmth, to remember why the season matters in the first place, because that's what Christmas stories are for. They're not meant to distract us from what hurts. They're meant to remind us why it's worth healing. This is how you'll know a Christmas movie has earned its place. Thanks for watching.